Builders in the Void. A story by user DrunkRobot97. Chapter 8. Falling. The ARM-76 White-Fin light tank was, almost from its conception, a dead end. The Alliance military learned lessons that had long been forgotten by their predecessors. Those who had driven their machines across continents before the splitting of the atom. The thinking was that a tank could sacrifice some of its armor for speed and range, dodging the toughest enemy positions and diving deep into the rear of its defenses. In practice, the thin armor allowed the enemy to knock them out of action before even reaching their targets, leaving the infantry behind them naked and unable to breach the line. After a short few years in the Alliance arsenal with a disastrous record, the White-Fin looked like it was destined for the scrap heap. But, as fate would have it would be given a second chance. Frank Hazel, a mechanical engineer working at OTS Systems Dynamics, over the course of a month, sketched a redesign of the tank. Hazel was part of the team that created the T-81 orbital drop craft that serves the Marine arm to this day. He noted the lightweight but effective armor developed specifically for the T-81, and wondered if it could be used in a repurposed ARM-76. What came about from his work would reinforce the tradition of human outside-the-box thinking for a generation. Airborne troops have been one of the most replicated innovations throughout Council space. Almost every race in front of me here, within a century of discovering powered flight, had the revelation of, if I can drop some guys with guns behind the line right here, on this bridge or supply depot, then I can cut off my enemy and I'll have the advantage. It is a wonderful idea, one maintained even today. Lieutenant Colonel Archie Sheridan was in the most hostile environment the Alliance fleet's Marines have ever fought in. The boardroom. Flag officers of a dozen different races were staring at him, eyeing him like hawks. It was the 247th Council War Games, a chance for allies to study the latest machines and methods they have at their disposal. Despite being the newest member, humanity was always given the spotlight. The best ideas always seemed to come from them. Archie had a sneaking suspicion that this wasn't one of the better ideas. Today, the battlefields have gotten bigger, and instead of jumping out of oil-burning planes, the journey is made from a carrier in orbit around a planet, to an orbit-to-low-atmo mothercraft, to the ground via a drop pod. However, even now, airborne suffer the same fault, their inherent lack of heavy equipment. Between the time they hit the dirt to when fresh forces can relieve them, they are on their own, with no supplies other than what they have on them, no form of transport, and no big guns to cover them. "That is the essence of airborne troops, Colonel," one of the non-humans in the audience voiced, speaking from centuries of military tradition. "If they brought any support with them, they'll either be slowed down from carrying it, or their pods will be so heavy they crash into the ground." Well, yes, from conventional wisdom you are correct. However, conventional wisdom boils down to this. Archie gestures to the screen beside him, showing several species with their versions of airborne infantry. All essentially an individual with a hand weapon and basic equipment, plus their emergency parachutes. Being the sole resource we could deploy on the ground, the topic of interest in the presentation, and hopefully one we can demonstrate within the next few days, is this. The screen changed, showing schematics for a heavily modified White-Fin, one that appeared to be a chunkier set of armor and a cage built around the chassis, with various pieces of equipment hanging from the bars. Gasps of disbelief bounced around the room, many wondering if humanity had finally started hiring lunatics to head their research and development. "Wait, you humans have found a way to make tanks fly?" No, sir. Flying tanks is still an impossibility. This is making them fall slow enough. Corporal Gary Sanders. Hatch button down, pressurizing now. Roger that, pressure rising, we're pretty much good to go. God damn, I hope nobody makes a fool of themselves while everybody's watching, especially in this ancient death trap. Your optimism warms our hearts, Pudsey. Sorry to bring everybody down, sir, but my granddad's tractor had more armor than this rusty can, not to mention what we're about to do with it. Please, if the brass wasn't watching us right now, I would try to do a backflip. Just try it, Simon. I had a full breakfast this morning, and I'm sitting right behind you. The banter of the crew was aiding in relieving the tension of their task. As far as the Raflum soldiers on the ground below them, playing Team Red, were aware, a human airborne force was about to land on them, comprised of only infantry, landing per section in pods. If the modifications to the old White Fins did as well as in testing, they'd have a nasty surprise. Now, the ARM AB-85 Kingfisher airborne tank. Its goal was to provide support to the infantry in causing havoc behind enemy lines, and squeeze a section of front with conventional forces to force a breakthrough. Of course, before it could actually do any of that, it had to hit the ground. If you can turn your attention to the image, you may notice a cage-like structure surrounding the main chassis. This is the drop box, a harness that can allow the tank to survive the journey from its release from the mothercraft to touching the ground. Step 1. Reaching the drop zone and the drop from the craft. Gary feels the tank shake and swerve from side to side. The transport holding them has moved out of the long, steady cruise to the DZ, and is now pulling turns to avoid AA fire. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your bombardier speaking. We have reached the balmy paradise of DZ-25, and we'll be opening the hatch in 120 seconds. We expect a casualty rate of 33%, so to be on the safe side, say goodbye to the Marines on your immediate left and right. One of them's not coming back. The emergency exit is directly below you, and that's it. Make sure your safeties are on and your seats are in the upright position. We hope to fly with you again soon. All 4 crew, Gary and Pudsey in the turret, Simon in the driver's seat and Joel on the radio, were belted in as tightly as possible. One of the smaller retrofits, Gary noticed, were the foam seats. Luxurious in quality compared to most tanks, though he knew they were a matter of necessity rather than luxury now. Do you know what this is like, Gary? Gary turned to his gunner, Pudsey, caught off guard by the question. What's it like, Pudsey? You ever seen a giraffe give birth? A collective groan is shared among the crew. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. No, seriously, they give birth standing up, and the little guy lands head first on the ground. It's like a 2-meter drop. A click, then a rumble of turbulence echoed outside, as the large doors of the payload bay swung open below them. Checking the landing cam, Simon sees the landscape, a featureless desert, crisscrossed with Team Red defenses and supply lines. Their target, a small hill covered in artillery, is marked on the screen. I see the target, sir. Who the hell trusted me to land a tank, though? Drop in 20. Relax, Simon. Remember the training. The AI's there to lend a hand. Tiny adjustments don't go overboard. Drop in 10. Getting feeds from the whole regiment. We're ready to go. I hope so, Joel. Let's do this. Godspeed, gentlemen. We'll see you on the other side. Drop. Falling. Of course, to help avoid AA fire, they'll need to cover a lot of vertical distance quickly. It's also important to separate from the transport, to avoid any unfortunate collisions. For the first stage of the fall, no systems for slowing down the tank are in use. We let gravity do its job and get the vehicle through the firing range of ground guns in as little time as we can spare. Anything in the cabin that wasn't bolted, strapped, or stuck in place flew through the air, as all things fell at the same rate. Pens, manuals, maps, and assorted knickknacks jostled about on their straps of Velcro, and Gary lifted from his seat as weightlessness took hold. Someone born planetside would compare the experience to swimming. A spacer would be reminded of EVA safety class. Even with the months of training beforehand, Gary was struck dumb with the unfamiliar experience happening inside the very familiar cabin. Once the tank has made sufficient progress, the drop box's negative mass generators kick in, slowing the vehicle in preparation for the landing. Rates of deceleration will, of course, vary from planet to planet, but we expect a typical starting value of 3 to 4 Gs. This will decrease as it falls, allowing the driver to make course corrections during final descent. With a loud clunk, the generators came online. Gravity returned to the cabin in strength, and the crew were pushed back down into their seats, feeling several times their own weight. Blood rushed down from Gary's brain, causing him to drift into a near sleep, dazed and unable to think clearly. He was barely capable of moving his head, seeing Pudsey beside him in the same condition. Gradually, however, the G's lightened, the load on his body and mind lessening with each second. Soon he and the crew regained their composure and speech. Have we been hit yet, Joel? This was a war game. There was no real danger, but Gary would be very upset if he was forced to stay out of action. No, sir, though I can't say the same for about a quarter of the regiment. Joel was looking at a screen with the stats of each tank in the regiment. Indeed, many, though still a minority of the tanks were registering OOA, out of action. Still better than what was expected. Christ, the boys down there must be wondering what the hell we're doing. How are you, Simon? Earned your pilot wings yet? Ask me that in 30 seconds, sir. We're on the dot so far, but we fly like a brick. We're airborne. We don't fly. We play chicken with the ground. Keep it up. Before the last few seconds of the landing, the tank is plummeting at 40 kilometers an hour. Still too fast to not damage the tank or the crew. 1 second before hitting the ground, the retro rocket motors fire on a perfect landing, canceling almost all velocity the instant tread meets dirt. Gary hears the momentary roar of the rockets and bears the strain of his weight doubling for an instant. The tank shudders in the 15 kilometers per hour crash with the planet, and then sits still, once again on terra firma. Oh, this goddamn magical hunk of steel. Joel, link up with any nearby units. Simon, get us moving before someone targets. Pudsey, high explosive. Prioritize the guns. Primo Victoria, gentlemen. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I really appreciate you. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, a fantastic week, a fantastic month, a fantastic year, a fantastic fucking life. Because, honestly, sometimes shit sucks. So, hopefully things are good for you guys. And I appreciate you. I love you. Oh, like, comment, subscribe, that whole thing. And cats or dogs? This is a really easy question this time. Cats or dogs? Just a one-word answer. Cats or dogs? No, there's no other choices. Those are the two choices. Cats, dogs. Done. Discuss. All right, guys. I love you. Bye, y'all.